Welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aaron Amin. Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm going to air a recording of a live YouTube stream I did recently with my friend, Marc Oshiro, also known as the Financial Firefighter. Marc is a firefighter by day, literally, a career he's very passionate about. But his story has so many more layers than that, including owning 14 out-of-state rental properties from 6 time zones away. This stream was part of a series of member spotlights for the Remote Real Estate Academy. Marc is one of several amazing investors engaging within the community every single day. For more info on what the Remote Real Estate Academy is and how you can join, head on over to remoterealestateacademy.com. Now here's the episode.
All right. Good morning, everyone. We are live on YouTube, X, Instagram. I got Aaron Amin here from the Remote Real Estate Academy. So good morning, Aaron.
Good morning. Much more morning for you. I know it's bright and early, about 9:40 here, but Marc got up early for us. Greatly appreciate it.
Cool, man. Yeah. No, I'm up early. I'm glad to do this, man. This is cool. I'm glad you reached out. And yeah, so how's everything been?
It's great, man. Yeah, I've been heads down. So for those who aren't aware of what the Remote Real Estate Academy is, it's a joint venture between myself and my business partner, Nathan Murith. Collectively, we have about 16 years of experience in real estate and over 20 out-of-state rental properties. And so we focus on demystifying long-distance investing, primarily focusing on new investors, people who know they want to get into it, but maybe they don't have the time, the knowledge, or even the capital yet, and want to know their options. And so when we started this, one of the very first people that came to mind was Mr. Marc Oshiro here, who is a long-distance investor extraordinaire. And so this is the first of what I hope will be many member spotlights. So we're very happy that Marc decided to join our community about a week ago. And so we wanted to just have you tell your story to our members and obviously anyone else who's listening. And the idea here is to really target someone who is on the fence about getting started, believes in the power of long distance investing, but wants to know what they need to do next. So that's why we're here this morning. I'm grateful for taking the time to tell your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. So for me, a quick story about myself. I do live in Honolulu, Hawaii. So a lot of people are probably wondering, why would you invest remotely? For me, I live in a high cost of living area. So for me, it just makes sense. For me, I'm all about the numbers where you can live where you want, but you invest where the numbers make sense. So I'm a full-time firefighter. So that's where I get the financial firefighter name from. And I made a little spin on it. So the fire is supposed to be in that little financial independent. A lot of people like to say retire early. I like to call it recreational employment. So we want to have that option to do whatever we want. And so that's my story. I was definitely headed down the path of just working for my pension, my W-2, and I was just coasting along and things happened in life and I realized how risky that I was being. And I said, I got to start doing something else. And that's what put me down the path of real estate. And like I mentioned a bit earlier, Hawaii is a very high entry point. So I decided to look out of state and I'm currently investing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 14 single family homes there. And yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
This is one of my favorite parts. Marc has a spiky point of view, right? That working a single job and trying to ride that all the way through to retirement and investing traditionally is actually risky. And I agree with that and understand that after spending a lot more time with investors like Marc and some of the other folks I met in the real estate investing community. But can you expand on what you mean by that, just for anyone who hasn't started thinking that way?
Like you touched on all the time, it's strange to hear someone who has like a pension and great retirement benefits calling a job risky. I can see people that maybe start a business or they're working in engineering and they're looking at it and yeah, maybe their job is a little riskier from that standpoint. Like for me, I have a pension, I have all these benefits set up for me when I do retire. But I started looking at things differently as far as what if I don't finish my career? What if I get hurt on the job? What if I can't do my 25 years? Or even life happens, right? For example, my son's mom is from North Carolina. She always wanted to move back to North Carolina. But I'm locked into this pension, right? I'm locked into working so many years, right? So for me, it's riskiness, but also offering you that flexibility to make life move. And if you've done that, you've moved locations, but you have real estate that also gives you that opportunity to make those decisions.
100%. Yeah, there's no shortage of additional flexibility that real estate can unlock, especially once you start building your portfolio out. So take us back to the very beginning of your long distance investing journey. And actually, before you do that, I think there's a couple of things you haven't mentioned yet, right? Which is that I believe you're a licensed realtor and you do some short term management. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I that was all after I started investing. So I would say I did the investing side first, and then I decided to get my real estate license. I do property management in Hawaii, short-term rental management. And I just fell in love with this whole real estate game, I guess you would say. So for me, I don't know if I would ever consider myself an investor. I had a condo, started back in 2008, 2009, and you just make that progression, right? Maybe you start with a smaller home or a condo, and then you work your way up to a single family home. And that's what I was doing. And I thought I've made it. I thought I was like, I have my home. Like I said, I have my pension, my retirement. I'm good. I can just work my 25 years and I'll enjoy life. And like I said, I just looked at it, it was super risky. And my friend was investing out of state. And that's what got me interested in looking other places, because I think that's sometimes what prevents people from getting started. They're looking in their own backyard, they're looking right around their neighborhood, and there's $1 million single family home is the median. And you're just looking, how am I going to get another property, or how am I going to get started? But you don't realize that there's so many other markets out there that the median single family home might be 200,000 and the rent might equal or be above the principal payment or the mortgage payment that you'd have to make. So you can actually have someone else pay down your mortgage while you're still making some income off of it. So it got me really interested. And I at first I thought he was joking when he was showing me properties in Pittsburgh. And I was just like, no ways. How can you buy a full home for $200,000? But yeah, there's a lot of places like that out there. And I think that's what people just have to realize and open up their mind to realize that there's so many opportunities out there. And I think that's what's great about the Remote Real Estate Academy and the courses like this or groups like this is you get around people that are doing it, and you get around people that have maybe different strategies than what you might be doing. And it just opens up your mind to different avenues.
100%. I think a lot of people don't even consider it as an option that you can invest outside of your own market because instinctively you think, I need to be able to respond to something. If something bad happens, I need to be the one to get in my car and drive over there. One of the questions I always ask myself, though, is at least for me, I'm not very handy myself. There's not a whole lot I can solve myself. I might be able to make a decision, but me driving over to a house in a moment of crisis, I'm probably not going to be the one to fix whatever's going on anyway. And so when you open up the opportunities of what is on the map all across the United States, there's so many different types of markets at different price points, different levels of, volatility. It's amazing how many options you can open up. So you said you had a friend that invested in Pittsburgh. Did he live there or was he also a long distance investor?
Yeah, he's also a long distance investor. So he's also in Honolulu, Hawaii. And yeah, he does have some ties there. He had his son's mom's family from Pittsburgh. So he does have some ties there, but I'm in the same boat as you. I'm not super hands-on as far as, and for me, but I also think that's something that you really have to look at yourself and evaluate. There is some people that investing remotely is going to be a struggle for themselves, right? They have to understand, but that's the thing, right? You really have to know yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest obstacles. And even people that I've helped get started, and I feel like that's something that sometimes we just look at the numbers and you may have to invest, you can still invest remotely, but it may just be instead of 6,000 miles away, like Pittsburgh, it might be on the West Coast where maybe your returns might be a little bit smaller, but at least it's still maybe a closer distance to where you are. So that's really something super important is just evaluating if you're the type of person that has to be a certain distance from their properties. But just like reiterating what you said, remote investing, it's not as hard as people make it, I think.
Totally agree. And I think maybe some people, when they see the name Remote Real Estate Academy, they think, oh, I can only apply this if I'm investing 2 time zones away or out of states. It's all the same concepts as if you were managing a property or a property manager in your own market. It's just the skills can apply in any market. That's the idea. And to your point, it doesn't have to be 6 time zones away. It could be three, or it could be none. Mark, I want to spend a little more time on your story specifically. So I have this theory that the three most common constraints are lack of time, lack of knowledge, and lack of money. But I think there's a fourth one that's very important, which is the fear and anxiety. And it underlies all those three other ones, because those three other ones can be solved in a number of different ways. But so my main question to you is, how did you conquer the fear of buying your first investment long distance?
So honestly, I cheat a little bit, right? I think that is part of my makeup. So being a first responder, I think we just have a lot of us have this mentality of we'll figure it out, right? And we have to realize that problems do happen and things are going to occur. So I'm more as far as let's not make the situation any worse. So I think it still comes down to like even in the firehouse, right? We train, we do drills. You put yourself in the best position to succeed. And like you talked about, having capital, knowledge, all these things, you can find a solution for that or you can improve on that, right? So if you work on those things, like even like joining the remote real estate academy or joining these type of courses or being in these communities, it helps you level up to where you just minimize the fear that you're going to have, right? So it just puts you in a better position to maybe address these concerns or it helps you feel more comfortable. So I think anyone wanting to get started, I think before you get into all the how am I going to get money, how am I going to get the education or the knowledge about this, you want to be around people that are doing it or even a few levels ahead of you because they've gone through struggles, right? And they can help you maybe skip a lot of these headaches, or just alleviate some of those fears. Especially, like I said, if you're going to be investing 6,000 miles away, you're going to want to connect with people that have done it to figure out how do you vet a property manager or how do you handle maintenance issues, things like that. So I think, like you're saying, leveling up in those other areas like knowledge and things like that's just going to reduce the amount of fear that you're going to have.
No, I love that. And one of the things that you're so masterful at that I always admired is networking and telling your story, but also finding other people who are on a similar path. Maybe not exactly the same, but they're going through a lot of the same things. And by surrounding yourself with people that are going through those things, it makes the isolated feeling of, oh my God, this is anxiety invoking. It makes that go away because you guys can share different moments that you've solved problems with each other. You can help each other not make the same mistakes. The community element can't be overstated. I know you and I are part of a few different communities together. And I think it's so powerful, just some of the people we've met. So you've clearly built quite a impressive portfolio, but along the way, you've also chosen to create content and kind of act as a connector within the real estate community. Can you talk about why you chose to do that?
Yeah, I think it's really about just documenting your journey. And I think that's why a lot of people do get started at first. They want to document what they're doing and show people what they're doing. And I think for me, it's more like you just touched on. I just like connecting with other people and hearing their stories and sharing their stories. And that's how we connect. Or we connected on X. I've met a lot of great people. And I think I was joking around to someone else about this is when we were younger, we grew up and you were, I guess, forced to become friends in your neighborhood, right? Or you grew up with people that live next door to you, or this is what the kids you played with or who you went to school with. But now with technology and Zoom calls and Restream and all these type of things, you can meet people and connect with people that maybe you have more connections with or have more things in common with. And I think that's what I'm finding out. I think X and Instagram and Facebook, just meeting amazing people and just having a lot of fun with it. And I think, but that's super important, right? Because like we touched on, the communities that we're in, it just helps you grow as an investor. You may not want 100 properties, you may want only 4, 5 properties, but knowing other people that are doing it and to figure out maybe why they choose not to have 100 properties or why they only want 5 properties. And I think just being around these people just makes it so much more interesting, and it just helps you along your journey on what you're trying to do. But I'm totally on the kind of building a brand and building a community. And because I think it's what's going to be like, I guess I want to help people, I guess, is what I'm really trying to say. I've, like I said, I'm a first responder. And I think at the end of the day, that's just who I am and wanting to help other people. And I think I'm transitioning from the fire side to the real estate side to help people reach that recreational employment level, I think.
Yeah, no, you very generous spirit when it comes to not only engaging within those communities and answering people's questions, but also just getting on camera, telling stories, building friendships with other investors. I know you have some recurring shows that you do where you guys just get around and chat, and then you would do some interviews. And I have a funny parallel that I thought of when I think of you. You're one of the reasons I started my podcast. I came on your show, and then I launched a podcast that's now on episode, I think I just filmed episode 50. And so I do have you to thank for that. But I used to work in the concerts industry and I was a booker. So my job was to go book the bands. And part of my career, I was at House of Blues, which is like a club. And in the arenas, you know who's going to be playing in the arenas. They're the big mega stars. Everyone knows their name. But in the clubs, you have to have this skill of finding someone who's up and coming or newer, but still has some sort of draw or allure and a story to tell. And that's a very difficult skill because especially in music, you have to read a lot of different trends and you also just have to have a pulse. You have to be plugged in. And so I share that because I think of you as someone who has a great eye for discovering a lot of talent and even smaller accounts, people who come into whether it's X or Instagram or YouTube, and you're good at just finding them and connecting with them. And next thing I know, they're on your show. And so I wonder, it accentuates the point you're trying to make about just being out there. But do you see that skill in yourself too? Because I definitely see it from where I sit.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. That's the joke that maybe the little small community that I'm trying to grow or build. I consider myself like the wing nut, the one that kind of holds everything together and it connects a lot of people. And I think I've always been like that. No matter growing up playing sports, being a part of teams, it's just always been that one to bring everyone together and have a lot of fun. And yeah, I think it's at the end of the day, I think it's just people that don't take themselves too seriously. I think maybe that's who I connect with on X or Instagram. And I notice people that are willing to put themselves on camera because it's not easy. Like you said, you started your own podcast, YouTube channel, and it's hard in the beginning, right? To put yourself out there. But I think people that are willing to do it, I think it's fun to be a part of that journey. Like Joe Farrell from Strive for 25, he's putting out a lot of stuff. He has a YouTube channel, podcast, but he's always on X, even though he's always starting fights on X, but he has fun on there, right? And Sierra from Homes and Hustles, she has her own little spin on things, right? She's doing house hacking, she's doing real estate, but she's also focusing a lot on the side hustle side, right? So I'm trying to build this community. And then you know who like Michael Zuber is from One Rental at a Time. And that's how he started, right? Like he retired early, he got depressed in a way and he didn't know what to do. And that's why he started his YouTube channel. And he just started connecting with other people on social media who had same interests. And he built this community of millionaires that come on his channel weekly. And they all have different niches or topics that they focus on. And that's what I'm trying to do. Like I mentioned, Joel, he's a lender in St. Louis. I mentioned Sierra and yourself. You and Nathan. I met Nathan too. I interviewed Nathan, I interviewed you, and you guys are starting this remote real estate academy, which I think is super awesome. And even in that community, I'm seeing a lot of people that are from X in that community. And it's just wonderful to see that. And I think maybe some people open up a little bit more too in those communities, right? Some people are, they don't want to put certain things out there on social media. But when you get in these communities, and I think that's what's great about it, you have this little more private setting to where you can maybe speak a little more freely and maybe talk about your mistakes a little bit more, talk about your journey. I think that's what's great about what you and Nathan are trying to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's up to the community leaders to create that safe environment where people feel comfortable sharing mistakes. And I think the leaders have to be willing to share their mistakes too, right? It's when you paint a too rosy of a picture of, hey, you just buy all these rentals 2,000 miles away and the checks show up every month. And if something happens, your property manager deals with it and that's it. Obviously, that's not the full story.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
best thing we can do is equip people. This is why I like actually digging into people's stories, because that's the best proof, not only of how it can work out for the positive, but how you conquer negative situations. So I have two things. I want to keep this segment a little short and sweet. One, what is a short example of a time that you overcame a long distance, something bad that happened at one of your properties? And then we'll round it out with what's one piece of advice you'd give to an investor who's right on the fence and thinking about investing in a long distance rental, but can't quite get over the edge.
I think definitely one of the mistakes I made is I skipped the sewer scope inspection for one of my properties. I think that's something super big. You don't want to skip. That's something you want to take care of upfront and see if there is any issues. So that would relate to, like you're saying, maybe a big maintenance issue that came up and how did I handle it from a distance. And I think for me, the biggest thing I want to get out there is it's always worse. That first time you get that call from your property manager or from maintenance, a lot of times it sounds worse than it is. It's just because you're not used to it and I talked about this with one of my most recent guests, and I think a lot of it comes back to we came up with a term called the ego tap, where people are worried so much about what other people think about them, right? So when you get that first maintenance call, you're like, oh, see, my friends are going to be making fun of me, or all these people are going to say, see what a mistake I made, and all these things. And I think people stress themselves out because they're worried about what other people in their maybe who they grew up with or people who they went to school with, what they're going to think about them. Because real estate is not easy. And that's why most people are not doing it because it's a lot more work than just putting money into your retirement accounts. And everyone is ready to point out, see, I told you not to do it, or see how risky it is. So I think a lot of people are stressed out about those first maintenance calls. They're like, oh, see, it is true, or see, it does happen. But if you go in it, and like I said, take your remote real estate academy and these communities prepare you for, okay, we're going to deal with it, right? There's, like you said before, there's solutions, right? And we're going to figure it out. Your property manager calls you, maybe breaks down what's going on, and you're really not going to worry about it too much until you get the full details, right? And then you just figure out what the solution is going to be. So I think that's the biggest thing. Don't stress out too much about it and just realize someone has been there before and there is a solution for it and you'll figure it out. And I think that's the biggest thing. But if you want to go back a little bit further, but I think that's my claim to fame. A lot of people might know me on social media because I scaled pretty quickly. And I always recommend people to take your time, no matter how easy the first few may seem as far as being hands off. Problems do happen. And I think, the first couple properties just tricked me. And I'm like, all right, I'm going all in. I'm going full speed ahead. And that's really what slowed me down. And that's what I think a lot of people know me for is scaling too quickly and making a lot of mistakes in the beginning because it takes time to stabilize properties. And I think that's what people don't realize.
Yeah, I think it comes down to preference. Some people really want to run it and gun it and buy 1,000 units in 2 years, and power to them. I'm friends with a lot of people that do have that appetite and they're down, like whatever their life circumstances are aligned with that. And that's good, right? You have a kid. I have 3 kids. It's different for every person. And you have to factor in what you can handle and what you feel like is right for you and in your circumstances. And I agree that there's a temptation to put all these properties together. Let me get 5, let me get 10, because then they can start pooling cash. And yes, that's a nice benefit, but yeah, every new property is also a new roof, a new set of appliances, new tenants, and potential issues. So you do have to balance those as you go through your journey. Mark, I want to be respectful of the time here. I know it's Sunday morning early, but what is one kind of parting word of wisdom you'd have for new investors? And also where can people find you and keep in touch with you?
My one parting advice would be to start documenting your journey and getting in communities and just putting yourself out there. Because what I found out is this real estate community is not other communities out there like maybe crypto and stocks but real estate, everyone seems like they're trying to help another person. Everyone wants to share what they're doing because a lot of times you can't buy all the deals too, right? No one always has the capital to be taking advantage of all the deals out there. And it's just like, hey, this one came across my desk. Hey, you know what? You go take a look at it. I don't have the time for it right now. I'm trying to stabilize another property. I'm trying to work on something else. And I think that's what I've noticed a lot is this community is just amazing. And they're just put yourself out there. I think that's the hardest part is a lot of people are afraid to tell people what they're doing. And I joke around. There's a few people that I helped start and they still don't want to tell people what they're doing. They're like, oh, I have to get to 10 properties before I start telling people that I'm an investor. And I'm like, no, you tell people now. Just having one property is you're way ahead of a lot of people already. And just from having one property, you can help other people get started. And I think that's what it is. It's just put yourself out there, like I said, don't worry about the ego tax. Just be around these because we've all made mistakes. And that's the thing. If someone tells you they haven't made any mistakes, I would probably walk away from this mentor or this person who might be trying to help you. If they're telling you that, oh, it's easy, don't worry about it, there's no mistake. And those are people that I'd be wary of. But yeah, and like I said, just connect with yourself, join your community, the Remote Real Estate Academy, or join a community and be around people that are doing it.
Whether it's ours or someone else's, I totally believe in the power of community. There's plenty of free ones. And obviously, social media, there's a lot of investors like yourself, myself, some of the other folks you mentioned who are very generous and willing to help new investors. And just to add one point to what you said, right? Even people with less experience than you can teach you a lesson as a more experienced investor. So I think you have to be willing to listen to other perspectives. And then, of course, the person who just started submitting offers, that's a couple steps ahead of the person who's just thinking about it. Like everyone draws inspiration from different areas. That's the value of community. And that's also the value of not comparing yourself too much to other people. So that's a really good piece of advice he gave. And yeah, Mark, we're very happy to have you in the community. Would love to see some more folks in there. And if anybody's interested, you can go to remoterealestateacademy.com or you can shoot me a DM. I'm most active on X at Aaron. And I don't know if we have the ability to drop anything in the notes, but it's been a pleasure. And thanks for taking some time on your Sunday morning.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, let's hang around 5 minutes, man. We're live. Let's see if anybody else pops in any question. But you did make a good point about even people with less experience than you can learn from. Because I always touch on this too, is that's a little bit of where I struggle with though. Because like how I touched on earlier, having that first responder mentality of not worrying too much about mistakes or problems, and we'll figure it out, we'll roll with it. I sometimes have a hard time connecting with people when they're telling me about their fears because I'm like, don't worry about it or don't stress. I have to realize that not everyone has the same personality as me. And for other people, they are worried about these things, right? So that, like you touched on, even people with less experience. And I think that's making me better in communicating real estate or financial literacy and things like that. Because I have to realize that people don't have that same mentality or kind of same, we'll figure it out attitude. And then, like you said, that is super important, I think, just understanding who you're communicating with also.
Yeah. And I think people, when they share a fear or a concern with you, it oftentimes, especially if it's a new topic or something that they're just exploring for the first time, they feel very uncomfortable when they tell you in the first place. And so they're looking for a connection of some sort and just the acknowledging that, hey, I'm sure it was probably difficult for you to even capture how you're feeling. One of the first things I do is try and remove the comparison as quickly as possible because people like to compare themselves to other people who are doing what they want to be doing. And I think that's okay in certain ways. There's certain behaviors or bits of experience that you can act upon. And there's mistakes from someone else's path that you can learn from and avoid on your own. But you are not that person. They are not, they're probably different age, maybe different goals, different backgrounds, different priorities, and probably a different end game. So I think the sooner people can realize that they are not the same as the people they're comparing themselves to, the easier it'll be to try and actually just, okay, parse out what are the pieces that we do have in common and how can we learn as much from each other as possible about those things. And that's why so part of why Nathan and I started this academy was that we had an extremely similar background. We both have young kids. We work full time. We're dedicated to our W-2s. We both advanced pretty well in our careers. We plan to keep our jobs. I forget exactly how you phrase it, Mark, but you talked about something to the effect of making work optional. And that is a goal of mine too. I want to make work optional, but the option I may take is to continue to work. And that's
Mhm.
okay because that's my path and my journey. But I think, yeah, like Nathan and I started this because we wanted to capture the pieces of our journey that tactically worked to get us there while making it very clear that everyone walks their own path. And so that's how we structure the coaching element of our program.
How did you and Nathan connect? Or how did you guys brainchild this?
So Nathan and I have known each other for about 2.5 years.
Oh,
And we started this about 6 months ago. So we've been building in private and now we're just starting to, we had one cohort run January through April that we're beta launching and building out the curriculum with. Now we're just getting out in front and advertising the academy. But he and I were part of a different mastermind that was also focused on long distance investing. That group is not very active anymore. And so we were probably the two most engaged people in that community. And we formed another group of 4 people. So we met every week for almost 2 years. And so every week we would check in and do these kind of accountability things. We would share stories and real life examples of stuff we were going through. We could always chat and get tips from each other. It was super valuable. And that was actually one of the first experiences I had in these community environments. And that was before I met people like Michael Zuber and Chad Carson and some of the other folks that I've now happily joined their communities. And so that was the first real connection. And we quickly saw that we thought very similarly. We had all these parallels in our path. And then when we started seeing that group fizzle out, we said, hey, we still believe there's a strong need for this. And we believe that we will never try and teach something that we're not qualified to teach, but we can at a minimum trace the things that allowed us to get to where we are in our journeys now. I have my 8 rentals. Nathan's got, I think, a little over a dozen now. Like we both bought and occasionally sold, but we've built a steady income stream to supplement our W-2s while raising our families without letting it take over our lives. We wanted to capture that energy and be able to pass that forward and also serve as a bit of a counter narrative. 0 to 1,000 units in 2 years, running and gunning in your Lamborghini and your yachts, right? That doesn't resonate with me. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there that maybe want a little more grounded view of what it could be like to build a portfolio.
cool. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing, man. These communities are greatly needed, you know? It's like a safe zone too, like we touched on. It's just a place where people can voice their concerns or their fears. And I said it's not going to be totally out there on social media. And I think
Yeah.
that's super important. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome,
And
man. I love it.
I appreciate it. And I think one other thing I'll say is it's definitely not the Nathan and Aaron show. That's not what it's supposed to be. We're the people who built the curriculum based on our experience, but we want it to be a place where people engage with each other. People like Mark and there's some other great investors that have joined that have a breadth of experience across a number of different areas. And I think that these communities are become as powerful as the members that comprise them, right? It's not about the people who start them. And so that's what we're aiming for, right? We want people in there that are willing to help. We will be there. We are very hands on. We respond to everything. And especially in this early run-in, we're enjoying getting to know each person very individually. And we want to preserve that for as long as we possibly can. But yeah, Mark, I appreciate the kind words and the opportunity to share some about it. And also for you sharing your story.
All right, cool, man. But I know, yeah, let's wrap it up. And looks like we got about 50 viewers. I don't know across which platforms right now, but before we
Love it.
wrap it up, just remind everyone what your community is called and where they can find you, man.
You betcha. Thanks again, Mark. Yeah, I'm Aaron Amin, and our community is called the Remote Real Estate Academy. You can find information about that at remoterealestateacademy.com, or you can find me most active on X. My handle is at Aaron Amin, and I hope to hear from you.
All right, thanks, man. We'll connect again. Garen.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.